two, one.
The South doesn't agree with my brother. The heat sandpaper his skin. Don't scratch, my grandmother warns, but he does, and the skin grows raw beneath his fingers. The pollen leaves him puffy-eyed, his small breaths come quick, have too much sound around them. He moves slow, sickly now, where once he was strong. And when his body isn't betraying him, Ohio does. The memories walking him in the night, the view from my father's shoulders, the wonder of Nelsonville House, the air so easy to breathe. You can keep your South, my father had said. Now Hope stays most quiet, unless asked to speak, his head bent inside the superhero comic books my grandfather brings home on Fridays. Hope searches for himself inside their pages, leaves them dog-eared by Monday morning. The South his mortal enemy, the South his kryptonite. The almost friends. There's a boy from up the road with a hole in his heart. Some afternoons he comes to sit in our yard and listen to our stories. Our Aunt Kay will tell him, lives in New York City, and maybe we will too, someday. And yes, it's true, once we lived in Ohio, that's why we speak the way we do. We don't ask about the hole in his heart, our grandmother warns us. We know better than that. There's Cora and her sisters across the road. One word in my grandmother's mouth, you stay away from Cora and her sisters. Their mother left the family, ran off with their church pastor. Cora and her sisters sometimes sit watching us. We watch them back, not asking what it feels like not to have a mother, because our grandmother warns us. We know better than that. There are 3 brothers who live down the road. We know this only because our grandmother tells us. They live inside their dark house all summer coming out. In the evening, where their mother returns from her work long after we've bathed and slipped into the summer pajamas, books curled into our arms. These are almost friends, the people we think about when we are tired of playing with each other. But our grandmother says, 3 is plenty, 3 is a team, find something to do together, and so over and over again we do. Even though we want to ask her, why can't we play with them? We don't. We know better than that. The right way to speak. The first time my brother says ain't, my mother pulls a branch from the willow tree growing down the hill at the edge of our backyard, and she slips her closed hand over it, removing the leaves. My brother begins to cry because the branch is a switch now, no longer beautifully weeping at the bottom of the hill. It whirs as my mother whips it through the air and down against my brother's legs. You will never, my mother says, say ain't in this house. You will never say ain't anywhere. Each switching is a warning to us. Our words are to remain crisp and clear. We are never to say huh, ain't, or y'all, get, or gonna. Never ma'am, just yes. With eyes meeting eyes enough to show respect. Don't ever ma'am anyone. The word too painful. A memory from my mother of not so long ago, southern subservient days, the list of what not to say goes on and on. You are from the north, our mother says. You know the right way to speak. As the switch raises dark welts in my brother's leg, Dal and I look on, afraid to open our mouths, fearing the South will slip out of our or into them. The Candy Lady. On Fridays, our grandfather takes us to the Candy Lady's house, even though our grandmother worries he's going to be the cause of our teeth rotting right out of our heads. But my grandfather just laughs, makes us open our mouths to show the strong, herby teeth we've inherited from inside of the family. The 3 of us stand there, our mouths open wide, strong white teeth inside, and my grandmother has to nod, has to say they are lucky before sending us on our way. The Candy Lady's small living room is filled with shelves and shelves of chocolate bars and gumdrops. Good, and plenty in juju beads, moon pies, and Necco wafers. Lollipops and long red licorice strings, so much candy that it's hard to choose until our grandfather says, get what you want, but I'm getting myself some ice cream. Then the candy lady, who is gray-haired and never smiles, disappears into another room and returns a few minutes later with a wafer cone, plain yellow, lemon-shiven ice cream dripping from it. Outside, this late in the afternoon, the sun is beating down. The idea of a lemon-shiven ice cream cooling us, even for a few minutes, makes us all start saying at once, "Me too, Daddy, me too, me, me too." The walk home from the candy lady's house is a quiet one, except for the sound of melting ice cream be- being slurped up fast before it slides past our wrists, on down our arms, and onto the hot, dry road. South Carolina at war. Because we have a right, my grandfather tells us, we are sitting at his feet, and the story tonight is why people are marching all over the South to walk and sit and dream whenever we want, wherever we want. First they brought us here, then we worked for free. Then it was 1863 and we were supposed to be free, but we weren't. And that's why people are so mad, and it's true, we can't turn on the radio without hearing about the marching. We can go downtown Greenville without seeing teenagers walking into stores, sitting where brown people still aren't allowed to sit, and getting carried out, their bodies limp, their faces calm. This is the way brown people have to fight, my grandfather says. You can't just put your fist up. You have to insist or something, gently, walking toward a thing slowly. But be ready to die, my grandfather says, for what is right. Be ready to die, my grandfather says, for everything you believe in. And none of us can imagine death, but we try to imagine it anyways. Even my mother joins the fight. When she thinks our grandmother isn't watching, she sneaks out to meet the cousins downtown, but just as she's stepping through the door, her good dress and gloves on, my grandmother says, "Now don't get arrested." And Mama sounds like a little girl when she says, "I won't." More than 100 years, my grandfather says, and we are still fighting for free life. We're supposed to be living. So there's a war going on in South Carolina, and even as we play and plant and preach and sleep, we are part of it. Because you are colored, my grandfather says, and just as good and bright and beautiful and free as anybody, and nobody colored in the South is stopping, my grandfather says, until everybody knows what's true. The training. When my mother's older cousin and best friend, Dorothy, comes with her children, they run off saying they can't understand the way Hope, Dell, and I speak. "Y'all go too fast," they say, and the words get all pushed together. They say that they don't feel like playing with us little kids, so they leave us to walk the streets of Nickeltown when we can't leave the porch. We watch them go, hear Cousin Dorothy say, "Don't you knuckleheads get into trouble out there." Then we stay close to to Then we stay close to Cousin Dorothy and make believe we are not listening when she knows we are, laughing when she laughs, shaking our own heads when she shakes hers. "You know how you have to get those trainings," she says, and Mother nods. "They won't let you sit at the counter without them." "You know those trainings you get," she says, and her mother nods. "They won't let you sit at the counter without them. Have to know what to do when those people come at you." She has a small space between her teeth like my mother's space and Hope's and Dell's, too. She is tall and dark-skinned, beautiful and broad-shouldered. She wears gloves and dark-colored dresses made for her by a seamstress in Charleston. The trainings take place in the basement of churches, and the back rooms of stores, and long car trips, and anywhere else where people can gather. They learn how to change the South without violence, how to be moved by the evil action of others, how to walk slowly but with deliberate steps, how to sit at counters and be cursed at without cursing back, have food and drinks poured over them without standing up and hurting someone. Even the teenagers get trained to sit tall, not cry, swallow back fear. But Lord, Dorothy says everybody has a line. When I'm walking up to the lunch counter and taking my seat, I pray to God, don't let anybody spit on me. I can be sweet, Dorothy, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, as long as nobody crosses that line, because if they do, this nonviolent movement is over.